Welcome everyone, and thank you for coming in this afternoon. This is our second year here at Whistleblower Summit, and we are doing a panel on guardianship abuse, family court abuses, and medical kidnap. All of these things adversely affect families, and what we need to drive home today is the process that's used, how this is done, how people's legal identity, their personality, the legal personality is stolen from them. This is the ultimate in identity theft. If you think what's happening with credit cards and that is something, wait till you get a load of this. You can find yourself in one of these probate tribunals, faced with a predatory guardian and an attorney who's working with them, and a hearing examiner who euphemistically refers to themselves as a judge. They are not a judge. They're a ministerial clerk or they're a hearing examiner. And they are working for the same agencies that are coming against the targeted victim. So there's no way they're going to render any kind of a decision or opinion that will interfere with what these people want to do. That guardian can stand up there and levy all kinds of charges against the victim. They're incompetent. They're incapacitated. They found them living in filth and squalor. They found them starving to death, dehydrated. It just goes on, and they are never required to produce any evidence for what they are claiming. They are never asked for any evidence for what they are claiming. This laundry list of charges is simply presented in this court, put on record, and it's accepted as coming from the mouth of God. What happens next is the theft of identity. The person targeted has their identity stolen from them and gifted to the guardian. The guardian now presents themselves as that person, accesses all of their assets, liquid, real property, whatever they've got, and begins plundering the estate. And they bleed it off till every last damn dime is gone. And once it is gone, then suddenly they resign because they can't do anything else. That's if the victim survives the guardianship. Because one of the first things that happens under that guardian is you get put in a nursing home or some other kind of holding institution and immediately isolated. This is against the statute in every state. Isolation is to be the last resort. In all cases, it's always the first option. Isolation, along with starvation and dehydration, are on the top 3 items on the global ban on torture. And yet it's done every day in this country, every single day. Hundreds, if not thousands of times a day. 10 years ago, when I actually first started in all of this, doing research, I found that people over 60 own 75% of all the real wealth in this country. 10 years later, people over 60 only owe 41%. That's how much has been stolen. That's how much has been taken. It is the greatest transfer of wealth that goes unreported by media, by the government, by anyone, is this theft of estates. In 2010, the Government Accountability Office issued a report. I have the original report they filed. 3 days later, it was changed. But they said they had examined 12 cases across 5 states and had concluded that these cases most often were by strangers to the family, in other words, these professional predators. And the rest of the time, it was family, community members, whomever. The outcry from the elder law attorneys, the National Guardianship Association, the College of Probate Judges, and a whole bunch of other supposedly elderly, active people, screamed bloody murder. The GAO changed that report and flipped that around and said, oh, it was done by family and community members. That wasn't how they first reported it. They failed to report on 55,000 cases that had been brought to their attention. Now what happens? Let's say you get caught up in this, and you're caught in this tribunal. You have no defense, because once you have your identity taken from you, you also have forfeited all of your rights. You cannot claim constitutional rights and protections. You cannot claim the law to protect yourself. You can't even stand up and speak for yourself. You can't hire your own attorney. They'll appoint you an attorney who's already working with that predatory guardian and the opposing attorney, and this is all a done deal before you ever step foot in the door, if you are even allowed to attend your own hearing. And most times you are not. When you are allowed to attend, most times they will drug you up with psychotropic drugs so that when you come in, you appear to be out of your mind, drooling, you don't know where you are, who you are, what you're doing. So this is how the process works. The bigger the estate, the faster they move. And they will take every last dime. If they are forced to file an audit at the end of the year, they're required to by law, seldom do, seldom are even asked for it, but if they're forced to file one, even after the person has died that they have targeted, they'll continue to file these audits, all to benefit the ward. I don't know what you can do for a dead person, but apparently there's something, and it costs money. But everything is taken. They are given testamentary power so that they can sell real estate. They can take real estate, and they can take real estate, retitle it into their own name. They can hold private auctions where only one person themselves appears, and they pay pennies on the dollar for the property, and walk away with it. They are driving. I want to tell you, we had one predator down in Sarasota, Florida. It was just running crazy. 2007, she was bankrupt, which should have precluded her from being a guardian. 2010, the only job she's had is a professional for-profit guardian. She's a multi-millionaire with several luxury homes, luxury cars, and a big, fat checking account. And all she's done is guardianship. In 1 year, she took $42 million off of families, and nobody will do anything about it. We're kind of switching gears on this. Up in Detroit, we have a particularly virulent predator running up there, and she's decided to do business by volume. She has currently 1,700 wards that she is supposedly taking care of, all of them on Social Security and or VA railroad retirements. She made herself the assignee on all their benefits, gives them $44 a month, installs them in one of her residential homes that have never been inspected, and laughs all the way to the bank. Last year, one of her homes caught fire, and 5 of her wards, who she had not ever seen, died in that fire. She was never charged with anything. And she continues to this day to be awarded more and more wards. The last thing you want to be is a ward of the court. You cease to exist. You truly cease to exist. You are declared dead, but still breathing. And this is what we've been facing, what we've been fighting. As this has moved on over the years, we found that family court, which Brian will be addressing, and the process in there of stealing children from their families with no evidence of wrongdoing, don't need to provide any. I'm from CPS, so that makes it okay. I don't need to prove anything. I said, so there you go. And CPS in this country is now considered the largest child trafficking ring on the planet. Other countries are now following suit and doing the same thing. We're hearing from people in several different countries who are saying they're doing the same thing here. They're taking our kids. We haven't done anything wrong. They're taking our kids. We don't know what happened to them. So Brian's going to be addressing that. Yolanda Bell, who we did a lot of coverage with her sister Anastasia Adams, and the process that family went through as Anastasia eventually succumbed to what had happened to her. She's going to be talking about medical kidnap and how your life is actually in danger if you go in the hospital, if you have been seriously injured, if you're an elderly person, you go into the hospital and you disagree with the doctor, you could be guardianized. Yolanda will explain about how the hospitals now have guardians on staff who also happen to be attorneys most of the time. And if you don't go along with what they say, then you're guardianized, and now your family is out of it. And they can do whatever they want, and they do whatever they want. One of the other things we started covering this last year, hospice, death by hospice. I started doing the research. I knew things had changed under the Affordable Care Act as regards to hospice. They got $1.5 billion in funding under the Affordable Care Act to change their mandate from one of Good Samaritan to basically the Grim Reaper, hastening end of life. Now when you go into hospice, all your doctor has to say is you're terminally ill. You only have 6 months or less left to live. The first thing that happens, hospice pulls food and hydration. Within 3 to 4 days, you are in a coma. and they are drugging you all at the same time. The average length of time you will last under these circumstances is 10 days. But because Medicare reads that they'll pay up to 6 months for terminal care, they get paid for the whole 6 months. So the faster they can get you out of there, the more money they've made. So I started collecting stats on that. 2010, this came right out of Health and Human Services. 2.5 million elderly people died on Medicare in this country. Nobody said a word about it. 2.5 million people. 80% of those died in hospice or in a hospice setting in a hospital. Now, what do you think the odds of that are? That all of those people were terminally ill and just boom, in 1 year. Since then, I have tracked another 9 million people through their own statistics showing that this culling of the elderly is in full swing. It's in high gear. And the more we fight back against it, the faster they are going. The harder we try to change the law or get laws in place that will protect the elderly, the disabled, the faster they're closing the loopholes, creating greater obstacles so that you cannot get out of these tribunals and into a court of law. Now, all of you sitting here think, well, it's not going to happen to me because I did estate planning and blah, blah, blah. It's out the door. There isn't a hearing examiner in the country that will not throw your estate plans aside and hand everything over to the guardian because you're incapacitated. It used to be incompetent, but that required evidence. You had to have some kind of evidence. They were having trouble finding enough psychiatrists to write up bogus reports saying you were bipolar for 4 years there. Everyone was bipolar. I had no idea so many elderly people were running around crazy. And but they were all bipolar. Well, when we started really hammering and questioning on that, they changed it to incapacitated. This means you stubbed your toe, you can't walk like you did, you're in bed with a cold, you're incapacitated, see ya. You're immediately cut off from your family, from your friends, from your religious affiliations, from phone calls. Most of the times you're put in a room in a nursing home that participates in this. No TV, no radio. Neglect is just the beginning of it, just the beginning. As an example, in Minnesota here recently, it was revealed that 26,000 nursing home complaints went uninvestigated in the state in 2017. The man heading up Health and Human Services in Minnesota was allowed to resign and step down so he could keep all his benefits and not be charged. But they never did anything about the 26,000 uninvestigated complaints. They never closed a nursing home. They never did anything. Oh, excuse me. They changed the patient's rights, Bill of Rights, and it says that you can't be isolated now by the nursing home. It can't be a requirement for admittance. They can't be involved with that. But the clinker was, unless ordered by a conservator or a guardian. The very thing we were fighting, the very thing we were trying to get put into place, that you can't do this. Even if you are a guardian, you cannot isolate that person and keep them from their family. It is considered a form of torture. And it does torture them because these people go to pieces thinking they've been abandoned, when in fact their families have been threatened with jail. They've been thrown physically out of the nursing home. They've been sued by the guardians. They've been pursued by the attorneys. The police have kicked in their doors and threatened them. We are under attack, and that's just the way I see it. If you're 6 years or older in this country, and don't think this can't happen to you. Over these years, I've heard more people say, I just assumed when I heard this story or that story, they must have done something wrong, or they wouldn't have done. Nah, nah, you just look like a big dollar sign. And the more dollars you got, the harder they're going to hammer on you. So basically what we're going to be talking about today is this process. What happens in these tribunals? How does this operate? What happens when they go after your children? What happens when they go after your family members? What's the process they use to get the job done? And it's all a system that is set up to deprive you of your rights, of your relationships, of your property, of your legal identity. It's all in place, and it's going on every single day. And we are just now getting some media coverage on it, but it's really watered down because nobody wants to get in any trouble. You know how that is. But that's basically what we're about. It's a grotesque system, and it is a culling. This is exactly what's happening. In closing my statement here, And people say, well, why would they do it? Why would they do it? Because the federal government currently owes Social Security $3.7 trillion in surplus funds they have taken since the Johnson administration. When you hear politicians say that Social Security is the greatest unfunded liability we have, it is for them. They're the ones that stole the money. They're the ones that used it for purposes other than what it was collected for. It's unfunded because they have no way to pay Social Security back. It's unfunded because they never intended to pay it back. But now we're here to collect. So if we're not going to pay back the money and we never intended to pay it back, what's the best thing? We'll get rid of you. That way you can't make a claim. Got it? That's how it works. But right before we let you go, we're going to take your house, your car, everything you owned, everything you ever thought of owning. And if you broke in the meantime, too bad for you. But anyway, so that's what we're going to do. And now I'm going to turn this over to Yolanda.